love me, and I love you.
Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. But you'll notice Alana isn't here, but you know who is? Dr. Jason Newell. So he's amazing. So I met him at Grieftastic in November in Los Angeles. He is from the South. I am from the north of North. And we met because he remembered my glasses. And he's like, I like your glasses. And we started to have the most beautiful conversation. And I knew I had to bring him here to you, our community. He received his BA in psychology from Auburn University and his MSW and PhD in social work from the University of Alabama. He is a licensed independent clinical social worker and a private individual practitioner with an endorsement in clinical and social casework. He has published books. He has spoken. He has worked with anxiety, people with mood disorders, self-care, and professional resilience. He works with veterans and military families and child welfare. He's also a super dad.
Yes.
Yes. And we today, we just chatted offline. Do we put the doctor hat on or the human hat? And I'm like, you are both. So this conversation is going to go through his personal story, and there may be reflections with his doctor hat on. And his story is so moving. And I'm honored you're here because most of the people, like we have men in our community, but it's predominantly women. And the fact that you want to speak out about this is amazing. So welcome to the show, Jason.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to be here. I miss Alana. Like Blair said, I had the pleasure of meeting both of them in California in November, and it was an immediate connection there. So I just wanted to say, Blair, that Jason is showing up today, right? Okay. We're going to talk and just to each other as friends and, showing up for the men. So shout out to all the guys who are going through things and maybe they don't know what to do about it. So that's part of the purpose of my work is, letting the men know that we hear you and that there are ways to improve and be resilient and you don't have to be tough guys all the time. But thank you for calling me a super dad because that's the label I want. That's the one that I want to push forward all the time.
Well, the last time we spoke, you and your daughter were getting ready to decorate for Christmas. And then we talked about Hanukkah bushes, remember?
Yes. And I was like, that's fun. So I'm from the South. I think she clarified. I'm from the deep South. It's pretty conservative and we're a spiritual community and we're predominantly Christian. And so I always love to hear about how other people celebrate the holidays. And my daughter actually happened to get mono. And so we spent that, I know as soon as we got back, we had mono. And so we spent that week putting up Christmas decorations. Like I put them up for her just so she would have something to look at, just to like kind of cheer the mood. And so by literally, I think probably by Veterans Day, we were fully decorated and we're still putting away. We're almost done here, putting all that back up.
That's good. Quick question. Are you having an earthquake?
Am I having an earthquake?
Oh, there you go. Your camera was shaking. I was like, what is going on?
No, so that's my feet under my desk shaking my chair. So
are you? You're just I got it. You're moving that energy.
You're making me nervous, Blair. I'm afraid I'm going to mess up a really good podcast for you. So
anything you do is going to be great. So listen, Jason, he shared with me that he found out his wife had an affair 3 years ago, and now he's a single dad to an 11-year-old girl. He, since 2020, has also suffered a lot of grief. His favorite aunt, mentor, grandmother, and right before I met him in November, he lost his dad. So there's so many different types of grief there. And you really, in your work, you study resilience and write about resilience. And then in your personal life, you've had to be resilient. And first of all, I think it's really amazing that you stepped up for your daughter. My personal situation, it was the opposite. My mom ended up becoming a single mom because of my dad's mental health and addiction. And being a single parent is so much work. And
no kidding.
So kudos to you. I think that's absolutely amazing that you're doing that. And what's your daughter's name?
My daughter's name is Eliza. And she'll actually be 12 at the end of this month. and we co-parent. So I have to be careful. I am a single dad, but I also have her mom is a really strong co-parent. So I don't want to vilify her in any way, but we co-parent and we do it really well. We try our best, and I think our goal is kind of always to give Eliza the best we have to offer, whatever that looks like.
And that's beautiful because that's not the situation for a lot of people. And the fact that you even said that is amazing because separating being a great parent and an affair, those are two different things.
Yeah, when people hear the A word, they're like, eek. And it is an awful word and it's a terrible thing to go through as a couple. But, I've always been the kind that's like, okay, I can spend the rest of my life being irritable and bitter about the past, or I can, create a future and,
Yeah.
not stay stuck in those moments of harm and hurt and move on. And that's part of the resiliency theory, right? That there's a choice you kind of make there. That's part of us as humans, not to get deep into the word, but I think as human beings, sort of within our central nervous systems, but even deeper, within the souls of ourselves, we hit a crossroad. And it's so cliche to say, like, I'm looking left, I'm looking right, which direction do I want to go in? Well, left is stuck in the past and you can stay on that road forever, or I can turn right and there's a future there and we don't know what that is, right? So yeah, it could be worse. We don't know, but I always, the odds are that it's going to be better,
So how did
if you go
okay,
into it.
I want to talk about this for a sec because I think like you have tools, you have it seems like you have the tools, but not everyone does. So if you're okay talking about this, how did you get over that, like the feelings that you had when you found out about this affair and betrayal? How did you separate that from also being a good co-parent and not letting that anger and those negative feelings towards the other parent get in the way of your parenting ability?
It does. I mean, it would be a lie to say, oh wait, that never happens, that the old things don't sneak up every once in a while. But I think it's how we engaged it. If you're asking into how I did it, who knows? I did have a moment. I mean, I don't know. I did lots of things. I did have a moment though, Blair, where I was like, okay, God, because I am a spiritual person. I said, there's a reason why in the universe that at some point in my life, I decided to be a researcher of resilience. There's a reason why I do research on how people get better instead of, the pathological diagnostic research that most of my colleagues do. There's a reason why I've been training other people to do this, for an entire decade here, just off of the backs of my first book. So, okay, Jason, can you practice what you preach, or you're going to become the client? And there's a golden rule. I'm a professor of social work too. So there's like the golden rule in my classroom, Blair, is like you can never become the client. You can be the client on your own time, but like when you're with someone else, you're working with them. You can't go into crisis if your client's in crisis or you guys both need a therapist. So I kind of thought, all right, what would I tell my client in this situation? Like, what would I do? And it sucked. I mean, it freaking sucked to be on the other side of the table. I'm really comfortable sitting in my chair and doing this kind of stuff. Yeah, let me give you all the advice in the world about how, but when I had to do it myself, it was hard. I had to be conscious not to fall into other habits, no drinking, no smoking. I mean, it was hard. But I had to make conscious decisions that I wasn't going to go back to maybe things I did as a younger man, to fill in the gaps here. I had a little one who at that time was 9, and that became my beacon. And I mean, maybe I've lost track about the number of mistakes I've made since then, but I do think, the wins, the wins are better. I think I've got more in the gain column over here than I've got in the deficit column. And it's not always going to be perfect. No relationship is perfect. But we can try. We can make a decision at some point. I guess her mom and I could hate each other, or we can work together to make sure we raise our child. And there'll be a great opportunity maybe one day when our child is grown that we can completely separate. But as long as there's a string attached, then I think we need to honor that for her. So that's where that's kind of how I got through it, and there were moments when we were both just a wreck and we just kind of had to be there for each other. And that's
That's
really hard too,
that's
to
beautiful. But that's really beautiful because a lot of people don't do that.
yeah.
And I think like also modeling that for your daughter, it's really good. It's going to save her a lot of therapy bills in the future, I think.
We hope,
Yeah,
we hope.
because we know how
So
expensive therapy is.
we do, and we know we know it's expensive, and we know that there are long-term implications for children of divorce. We know all these things, and so
Mhm.
her mom is also really attentive to that. So we do try to track these measures, and that may be something that we both sort of you know in our she's a special education teacher, so and I'm a social worker, so we have we have special skills at looking at things that happen in children's lives that have been of benefit to us in
Yeah.
those ways.
So you went through this, you're in this place now. You also study resilience, but not like the academic side, but the human side, I guess. And
Well, I
you're
studied the human side academically.
yes, the
That makes
human side
sense.
academically.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to kind of some of your findings, but with what you've learned and navigating one of your most recent experiences, the loss of your dad, how were you able to take what you've learned to navigate that? And it's still fresh. Like if your dad had just passed away, that's like you're in your first year, which is really terrible. Like losing a parent is the worst.
First
And
6 months. Yeah.
yeah.
So
First of all,
first of
wait,
all,
what's your dad's name?
name is Terry
Oh,
Newell. He's just a great guy. And can I tell you that I love that you asked me what I've learned, because in America it's what have you learned, but in the South we use learnt, and it's Southern slang.
oh, is it?
It is. So that just like when you said it immediately, like he popped in my head. Okay, so the weird thing in the universe, Blair, is that I had just completed my most recent project, my 25 project in April. It launched in April of last year, right? And through that journey, it was called Doing Men's Work. We found so many men in the study that were grieving that we added a chapter to the book on grief and loss. And so I had been sitting sort of for 3 years, collecting this qualitative thing. So collecting the stories, right? This is your alley, right? I'm hearing the stories. It's not a data-driven project in terms of statistical analysis. We're looking at narrative storytelling here. And I'd heard all those stories of pain. I had been through all these things. I'm a therapist, so I work with people who have had grief and loss. But it was just like it all kind of fell into place in some weird mystical way. So that reinforces, my faith in something, that there's a more powerful God, the universe is more powerful than we will ever know. Whatever God you believe in, or whatever spiritual deity, or, even if you're not religious, but you have a spiritual presence in your life, it's there, right? It
Yeah.
guides you. You pay attention to the signs. And so I came out of that, and it happened so suddenly. So sort of going back. So my dad came to visit me on May 8th, which is his birthday last year. And he had gotten a bad lab report. And I was like, I'm not crazy about this, Dad. And we have a really good UAB hospital in Alabama is really known for their cancer treatment center. I'm like, I want you to come to Birmingham, and I want to go to Kirkland Clinic, and Mom and I are going to take you. So that was the day we sort of realized that one tumor was 5 tumors, and he had a really large cancerous tumor wrapped around his liver, and it was an inoperable tumor. Because of his age and because of other health impairments, he was not donor eligible, not tissue eligible. I was like, Dad, I can give you some of my liver, but I don't know if it's the greatest one. It's been used a lot. You might be able to find a better donor. But and there was just really nothing to do. And he is so much, he was so much stronger than I am, more masculine probably in many ways, but he was hardy. So you've seen me, I'm 6'2", I'm a big guy. Like, let's hang out. And he was just hardy. Like, he's not the one you would look at and go, yeah, this guy's going to go downhill. So from that point, we went into immediate sort of crisis intervention, chemo treatments, he was on a cocktail. So he had, chemo seeds. I don't know if you know about that, but they were implanted. So they were working sort of in the liver. He was doing oral treatments, and he was also doing sort of traditional chemo treatments. and his quality of life just declined. It just declined. So if we fast forward to right before I met you in September 5th, he had just completed a chemo treatment, and I picked him up from recovery, and with my mom and my sister, we're very closely knit family. So we do things together. I'm not where they are, so I'm like the out of town kid. I live in the city and they live down south close to the beaches where I grew up. And so it was my mom's birthday, which is so strange because we diagnosed like officially dad's birthday, we get to mom's birthday. And we were all home. So some miracle. So we picked him up on a Saturday, right? And we were all home. My daughter was with me, my sister's kids were with her, and we were able to all be together at their house on mom's birthday. And the next day I went back home. My sister had stuff to do with her kids. So he and my mom had that whole day together just to spend together alone, which is weird because we were like, should we be there? Should we not be there? He had a chemo treatment on Monday morning. So they go back into the hospitals Monday or Tuesday. But post that chemo treatment in recovery center, the cancer didn't actually kill him. This is what was so traumatic. He had an aneurysm as an effect. He had a major he had a history with that. He had an aneurysm before, so it was a high risk chemo treatment. And so he bled out kind of right there in front of my mom. Like that was how it all ended. We had so that was the last time we all saw him. I mean, we all saw him that one random, day. And so this is a Wednesday. So I'm getting up and I'm getting my daughter ready to go to school because it's a drop off day. And I told her mom, I'm heading back to South Alabama. I had gotten FMLA from work. I'd had clearance to spend the rest of the semester home taking care of him. The plan was that he would expire kind of naturally at home with my mom and my sister and I, and we would be the caregivers and we would work with hospice. That was kind of where we were going with that as a plan. And we thought that was too soon. At that time I was like, I hope we make it until Christmas. That was kind of the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So my sister calls and I answer the phone and she's like, you need to come home now. I was like, I'm packing, I'm getting ready. I need to take Eliza to school and I'm on my way. Like I was not prepared at all. And nothing happened. She kind of went cold because I think the phone wasn't working inside the center and they were, I didn't know he had coded. She didn't know he had coded. She was on her way. And she lived maybe 2 minutes, so she's, running in the hospital. It's very dramatic. My mom is there. It's too late. I mean, they tried to resuscitate. They had a whole team. And we're a local family. So we're from a really small town in South Alabama where everybody knows everybody. So the doctors knew him. My mom had been in the medical industry for her entire career. So it was like everybody was there. And then she calls me back and I was like, what happened? And she kind of was like, you can kind of tell. I said, oh God, can they hold him until I get there? Is he intubated? I was just thinking that was the worst case scenario. She was like, I remember this day, she said, what intubation, baby? I don't know why it was the way she said it, the way she said that word. I was like, why are you using this sweet? I said, he's dead. And she was like, yes. So at that point, we hadn't even gotten to school yet. So I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? So I dropped my daughter off at school. I was just kind of in dissociative, universe, autopiloting, kind of came home, packed, and left. And that started the whole thing, so it started, and it was a blur. Like I have clear memory loss from the moment that happened, going through the funeral, doing the planning, taking care of my mom, which is now another primary responsibility for me.
Mm-hmm.
So the grief,
it's a lot.
It comes and goes, but it's almost, my sister and I were talking recently after we've been doing this for several months. It's this thing where we're just now starting to do it because we've been taking care of mom. And that's nothing against her, but it's just like we had to pause the button for what we needed to do. And we're really supportive of one another. So we have these conversations often like, okay, this weird thing happened today with dad. We think he's in the ether. Usually it's something, some kerfuffle of some sort that just, we're like, okay, but it's kind of like there was a pause button there. And she told me she's just, waking up. It's just been go, 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 go. As you know, after the funeral, at least in America, you don't get FMLA. It's dead now. So I had to immediately come back to work. I took some grief. I had 2 weeks of grief and loss, and then I'm coming back to work, and there was a big sort of pause in my work life and my parenting life, in everything. And going to California, that's kind of said, we were talking earlier, was my, kind of like I'm crying uncle now. I just need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And I have this fellowship or this endowed chair that I told you about, the Janine Cannon Bozeman, that allows me to do research on grief and loss as part of job. And I was like, okay, Janine, this is your contribution to, Jason's grief. I'm going to use this travel allowance and I'm going to go and meet really great people and, hang out in California and see my friends out there and meet new friends. And I feel like that was the reset. I don't even think I even started until I was able to hit that reset button.
Like started grieving?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were in survival mode, right? Like it's like well, this, it's like your adrenaline kicked in and you were in that fight or flight. And because you didn't feel safe enough to feel the grief
Right.
at the level you needed to feel it in order to begin to heal it, like you had to put yourself in a situation where you were out of your day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of people actually turn to travel for healing and grief. But I completely get it.
It was so dissociative. I was going through the motions. I was showing up where I needed to show up. But I felt like, and it was like I was telling you, there was a little bit of, a Gemini there. I'm a Gemini. We have Dr. Newell would show up and get the work done, and he could even do grief work with other people and be in that autopiloted mode. But Jason was totally checked out.
Yeah. And I mean, also, like, I get it. So, like, my mom died quite suddenly in the pandemic, and I was still showing up and performing, and I had a really successful business year. But, like, I was able to compartmentalize, but, like, I also feel like I can't remember a big chunk of my life during that time. And it felt like my brain broke.
Yeah.
And I was just, like, doing what I had to do to survive. Also, I was dropping balls with clients. I forgot I was working on certain projects. And just like months later, I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh my God, what happened to that project? And I'd go back and like, I just like stopped. Yeah. And it's like, I had this thing where my brain broke. And one of the speakers at Newell actually was talking about like how your brain kind of breaks. And I'm newly diagnosed to ADHD, and my grief exasperated that. And I wasn't medicated until recently. So I think with you, like a high performer, compartmentalizing, but also having to now be the caregiver of your mom, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's gears changing. You're so right. I was going to bring that up. The type A high performer, when we drop balls, it's like, what's going on here? And I was like you, I would check out. I would be like, oh, I was supposed to show up. I found myself missing meetings. And I don't know if this happened to you, but I've kind of recovered from it now. But it took us several months. I was so tired. I think my brain was broken, but I also think I just thought it was so tired and overprocessed and overstimulated and so I was tired of telling people what happened. I was tired of reading cards that came in the mail. I was having, this is hilarious, my sister and I was having nightmares that I got stuck in a time loop.
Oh no.
And I was trapped in my parents' house because we spent 2 weeks there, which, I don't know how you would feel about, but there's something really bizarre when you're 49 years old and your sister's 44 and you're like back in your childhood bedrooms at home.
Jason, my mom was a single parent, and like when she died, my sister and I were in our dead mom's house in our childhood bedrooms.
Yeah. It's weird, right?
Like taking care of shit. Like it was really weird. And like, I was like, this is just so weird. Like, and like, also my mom is not here. She's dead.
Right. It was bizarre. So everything in the house had him in it. They had only lived there. So my sister and I are there camped out, taking care of my mom. And I was having nightmares that I got trapped in a time loop and I couldn't get out. And I would wake up every morning to someone like banging at the door, and they would have a pound cake. because everybody brings you food in the South.
Oh my God. And in Judaism, we got so many bagels. I turned into a bagel.
Yeah. And it would just be like, hello. And it would be like this random person, here's your pound cake. And I would shut the door and it would just start again. But part of that was reality because when we were awake, it was really happening. And so, I mean, the grief process in the States, I don't know what it's like. I mean, but it's really weird when everyone shows up in your home and it's such a private experience and they want to do well by you. They're really kind. And in those moments, we were like, everybody was our friend and everybody's going to do everything in the world they can. And here's all the food in the world. And it was just surreal for me. I remember standing in the hallway and, my mom is just, bereft. She's inconsolable. And so I'm trying to take care of her. We have her sequestered sort of in another room in the house. And I was standing in the hallway and this grown man was just like breaking down, going, my best friend died. And I remember thinking, and I just said this, and it was so pointed. I said, I'm so sorry your best friend died. Like I was so disconnected from the idea that my dad had died. I was like consoling people who
you
were
put on
upset.
your Dr. Jason hat.
Well, and it blew my mind because I got really tired of consoling people who were upset that he had died.
Yeah.
I got tired of hugging people. I got tired of people crying to me. I got tired of people, through the funeral. We had there were over 400 people at the funeral itself and people coming, and we had to close. I remember making a really conscious decision that some people didn't understand, but we closed the house when it was over. I was like, I want the house closed down. I want the doors closed and locked. And I want my mom to have some time to rest. And I want my sister and I to have time to go through things and just like get rid of food. I mean, we needed, and people continue to show up. And sometimes we would just be like in the bedroom. I remember one morning at like before 9 a.m., the day after, we were actually resting and all three of us were in my bedroom for some reason talking and somebody's banging at the door and I'm like, okay, paper, rock, scissors. Who wants to go get the pound cake? It was a pound cake. And I remember the person just kept yelling, were you asleep? And I was like, yes, can I help you? And it was just like, were you? Yeah. And they wanted in. Like they wanted to come in the house and they wanted to sit and talk and they wanted to see my mom. And I was like, this is not happening.
Yeah.
Like I remember just kind of being really cold toward that kind of behavior.
It's like they're putting their grief ahead of your grief.
Yeah, it was weird, right? It was a weird, bizarre experience for my whole family. And, my sister and I still talk about how surreal that whole experience was.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's a lot. Okay. We're going to run out of time soon, but I just want to check in with you now because that would sound very traumatic. How are you doing with your grief today?
Yeah, so today feels like a good day. I think, we were talking about the Grieftastic or the is it Endwell? Yeah, the one that had the book, right? You got a little book with it. And so I was taking notes, right? And I'm going through it now. And I'm like, I remember there was a note that's like I woke up in California, thank you. Like there was a moment where I was like, I woke up one morning and I felt like, okay, Jason's back. Like I think it was because I was away from all of that. So in terms of today, holidays were healing. They're difficult, right? Because it's the first holiday in my entire life I haven't had my dad, since I was born. I've never not had a Christmas without this guy around, he was kind of a Grinchy Christmas dad. He's like a grumpy Clark Griswold dad or something. So he's like, it was very quiet. I spent a lot of time. My daughter and I got to go to the beach for the New Year. That was really fun. That's home for me. That's where I feel the most at home. I feel like starting work in January, like I'm recentered. I feel like I'm back to where I was before. In the crisis theory, I'm like, hey, I made it to the pre-crisis state. I feel like I'm where I was before this happened, and maybe that's like the marker for me that now I can start to, it's a marker of healing for me. Things are not wonderful, but I do feel like I'm back to where I was in September of last year, just in terms of where I am in my body and where I am in my mind, sort of my body, meaning, less anxiety, sort of less less depression around the grief, less ruminating thoughts. I feel like I'm recentered, I'm recalibrated where my body and my mind have linked back up again because there was a disconnection there for me. My body was doing what it knew to do, and my mind was like, I'm out. I can drive the car, I can get to where I want to be, I can drop off, I can pick up, but the emotive sense of self, sort of the soul self, was just checked out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm checked in. So I feel
That's
like I'm checked
great.
in. Yeah.
So your links are in the show notes, your book, your website, everything about you. And like, I really appreciate you sharing all of this, in such a short period of time about about your wife and your kid and, your most recent loss. With all the research that you're doing, on resilience, what do you think one of the biggest takeaways or lessons are that you want to maybe translate into advice for our listeners?
Gosh, there's so many. All right, so I'll go Jason on it. I think what we found out that I know to be true. All right, so let's just kind of put it that way. We found out that people have a capacity to be resilient, but it's a reservoir. We don't know that ability lies in your soul self. It's like love, it's like compassion, it's like faith, it's like an energy, right? It's not something that you can quantify. I can't, say, Claire, you're like a 9. Blair, sorry, I said Claire.
It's
Blair, you're like a 9 on a scale on my measure of resilience out of 10. Like there's really no way to quantify that, right? We found that out. But what's fascinating and what I've learned is that people can do it. I think there has to be a trigger. I mean, to be truly resilient, I think trauma, though it has a pejorative kind of negative connotation, and it's horrible. Grief is trauma, right? But when you're presented with that, when you are faced with trauma and with adversity, there is a part of your humanity that turns on. And it's like that's your resilience. And it comes in so many different factions. So, like the pound cake people, that was sort of like life depleting for me.
Mm-hmm.
But my true friends, the ones who knew me, the ones that are still showing up, they're life giving for me. That's resiliency. My family, life giving for me. My daughter, resiliency. Doing meaningful work, doing work for me is resilient. Like everybody is different. There's no universal formula. But what's truly fascinating is hearing people's stories of resilience. And I do love that in the world of trauma, which is one of my areas of practice, like there's been this huge change, Blair, where we're looking now like you are. That's why I love Resilience AF. Like, this is so wonderful. We're looking at stories. We're not just telling the stories of all the painful shit that happened that fucked everybody up, because you said I could swear. So I'll put my.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking now about how people got better. That's more interesting.
Yeah.
It's a strengths-based approach. And that's part of like being a social worker. I understand you went through this really terrible, awful thing, Blair. But I want to, honor what you're doing to get through it. That's resiliency. That's what I want to measure. I remember having this moment as a clinician where I was like, okay, holy shit. Everybody's had this person in their life, right? Who's gotten through, and sometimes it's us who's gotten through this terrible, awful tragedy. And you look at that person sometimes, it could be your mom, it could be your grandmother, it could be your friend. How in the world did you get through that? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, that's what I want to measure.
You know what? It's really interesting. That's really great advice. And maybe this is a conversation for another time. But we've been so that's how we tell our stories. You share your challenge, your story, how you got through it, how you are resilient, and advice for others. And then we actually have now had all this data that we've been analyzing with the common threads on how people got through what they got through. And it's really fascinating. So I think it's amazing that both of us, our research, my unintentional research and your intentional research, it aligns, and it just shows that you can get through it. And we define resilience here as bouncing forward from a challenging experience, and that we all have this resilience muscle. We're born resilient. It's like a natural reflex, an instincts. Like, we can be resilient, but there are things you can do to strengthen that resilience muscle using neuroscience. So when life gets hard, you can get through it faster or more gracefully.
Yeah. And using that metaphor, thinking medically as that muscle, that soul muscle, that central, it can get atrophy. right? It can get worn down, and if you don't nurture it and take care of it. And so I'm thinking like your retreats, in my book, I always say it's your self care. And that's become such a main, I don't like the word anymore. When I wrote the book, it was really the pandemic that triggered all that. All of a sudden, oh,
Yeah.
wait, everybody needs self care. And before, nobody really talked about it that way, but that's your key to resilience. It's how you provide yourself with space to take care of your own needs while you're taking care of the needs of others. It's a both and. And you cannot practice self care and self judgment in the same space because they cancel each other out. So you have to let go. That's probably the lesson. Okay, that's what you need to hear. That's the thing that's taught me
Repeat it.
most about my. Okay, so your self care is your key to professional resilience, right? Or resilience. Let's just take professional out. It's your key to resiliency. And it is creating a space for yourself where you take care of your own needs while you take care of the needs of others, with the knowing that you cannot practice self care and self judgment in the same space. They cancel each other out. So, practically, that means you have to let go of your self judgment. You have to let go of, like, Jason, you should have done this, or you should have been there more, or you could have been a better parent, or you have to let go of that because it won't allow you to care for yourself, right? So if you're sitting in self-judgment, that's depleting of the muscle that you're talking about. It causes atrophy. But if you're sitting in a place of nurturing and self-compassion and understanding, and for me, one day I kind of was like, dude, you need to show up for yourself just like you would show up. Like, Blair, if you called me and were like, this really terrible thing happened and I want your advice and I know you know things, like I would show up for you, but I was not willing to show up for myself in the same capacity. So it's, self-compassion. This is like from Christina Neff's work in Texas. You show up for yourself in the same way you show up for others and with full intention. So if, you want to be the super dad, you need to be the super other things, right? You got to show up for yourself in the same way. That's so hard for my brain to process, right? It feels really fulfilled when it's doing for others, but it does not like self-care.
And
I
you
think
know
that's,
what? I'm missing
why I wrote about it.
because like self-care doesn't need to be this huge thing. It can be simply
No,
canceling plans because you're tired. It can be drinking a glass of water or making sure you shower. And I couldn't agree more because you can't pour from an empty cup. And how can you take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself?
right. And don't tell people if you're in my business to take care of your health and your nutrition. Go see your therapist, spend quality time with friends, doing all those things if you're not willing to show up and do that for yourself.
Exactly.
And we found that in our research. So my discipline in particular, social work practitioners, mental health practitioners, we're the worst. We are the absolute worst at doing this, but we're the best at showing up for other people because nobody's kid ever missed a doctor's appointment. Nobody's mom that was sick ever missed anything that they needed. No school event or parent teacher conference was ever not showed up for.
Yep.
We do all the stuff at the soccer games, right? We're really good at that shit. But when I was like, okay, so what's left for you at the end of the day? And
Right.
they're like, I take a shower and go to bed. I'm like, that's called having a life. You
Yeah.
get to do that. That's not necessarily going to change your world, your professional or your personal quality of life.
Yeah.
So if I get that the drinking water and taking a long soothing bath and doing things like you need to drink your water every day are good. But sometimes people, I think, turn these things into like, okay, self-care. I'm going to go home, have a glass of wine.
No, that's not self-care.
Self-care for the
Yeah.
week. That's
I love that. That's so valuable. We'll have to have you back because you're full of so much information. And
love it.
I just want to thank you for joining us today on Resilient AF.
Yeah, thanks. So I do heart pats when I tell people it was my pandemic thing. So whenever I would go off of a session or something, I would always do heart pats. So
I love that.
that's my way of saying bye and have stay safe and healthy. And I hope we reconnect soon. And fingers crossed that it might be in Alabama.
I love that. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to another episode of Resilient AF. Remember, it's okay to not be okay. Life is hard and easy and beautiful and dark and all of the things, but you do not need to navigate it alone. We are here to be that lighthouse in the storm for you. And just remember, you are Resilient AF.
Yes.
That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are Resilient AF.